What's up, guys? Roheezy, Rohit Raju here. Today we're talking about respecting your core audience, your core fan base, right? I watched the He-Man trailer recently, the Masters of the Universe trailer, and I wanted to gauge how a lot of the core audience, the core fan base, reacted to it. And the majority of them that I've seen, which would be my demographic, liked it. And if you look at that trailer, it looks like the toys and the cartoon, it just looks like it came to life. The outfits are almost exactly the same. Castle Grayskull looks like Castle Grayskull from the cartoon. The statue holding the sword in the comic book shop is the original concept art for He-Man. His last name is Glenn when he's on Earth, which is a nod to his mother, who her last name is Glenn. She was an astronaut from Earth, got sucked into a black hole, and ended up on Eternia. So there's a lot of deep cuts. Now, the vibe, the feel of the film, at least the trailer, it feels very Marvel, right? Whether that's a good or bad thing, it just really depends on your preference. But to make a long story short, it catered a lot to, or at least respected, the lore and its core fan base. Now, it could be a bait and switch when it comes out. It could be like a Masters of the Universe like Kevin Smith did, which a lot of people didn't like because it just really felt like you spoilers, you kill off He-Man and you literally just replace him with Teela, right? You give her his storyline. And you see that a lot with current Hollywood. And that's kind of what we're going to get into. We're going to talk about like Star Wars, Terminator, Lord of the Rings, The Witcher, stuff like that, which Halo, how these people have taken a franchise, you have new people involved, and they, instead of respecting what made it and what brought it to the dance, they want to change all of that. And then when your core fan base says, hey, I don't like that, why did you do that? They take that criticism as an attack, and they, in turn, attack the fans and label all the fans, because there are some toxic fans out there, but they label all the fans that don't like what they've done with the franchise as toxic fans, which I think is utter bullshit. A lot of these franchises, the people that are in charge, act like they were broken and they need to be fixed. They act like they need a new audience or a modern audience. That's not the case. If you look at the lady that's the showrunner for the Witcher TV show, Laura Schmidt something or other, I think it's like Hedrich or something, and you know me with names, I'm always fucking up names, but she's gone on record saying she doesn't like the books, she doesn't like the video games, she does not like the lore and the core, the source material. She doesn't like any of that. So the first thing I'm thinking is, why the hell are you involved? If you don't like any of that and you are going to fundamentally change the essence of The Witcher, why are you involved in this product? You don't like it, so therefore you're changing it. And you're already pissing off the people that have followed and supported this franchise for years. That's a horrible decision. That's why Henry Cavill left. Bo DeMeo, who used to work on that, said, hey, these people were not fans of The Witcher, and they totally tried to change everything. They didn't totally try. They changed everything that made The Witcher The Witcher. That's why when Bo DeMeo did X-Men 97, he said, I don't want people that aren't fans of X-Men working on this project. And that's how it should be, right? You shouldn't have people that don't love what made it the brand in the first place, what made it popular, being in charge of it. I feel like Star Wars is like that. Kathleen Kennedy, she is very ultra feministic, right? And she has these feminist views. And Dave Filoni and Lin-Wen Brennan, who are now the new presidents, they have the same views. My buddy had asked me, he goes, I thought you would be happy that Kathleen Kennedy is no longer a part of Lucasfilm, or she's not the president anymore. And I'm like, I'm not, because it's literally the same team, the same regime in charge with the same vision. It's the same people. They're just sitting in different chairs. That's all it is. So Lin-Wen Brennan, she's been accused of being very discriminatory against the men that she works with when it comes to advancement. She had made a statement that she thinks it's unacceptable that 5% of the visual in the visual department, and they're like the visual supervisors are women. But how many women are in that field? If there's not a lot of women in that field because they don't choose to be, then they're not going to have a lot of people in those positions. So you're just giving your friends in these positions that share your vision these positions, which goes against anything. That goes against real progress. And these are the type of people that scream inclusion, but it's not inclusion. It's replacement and substitution. So you have these people that are more involved and stress more importance on the message than the mythology of the franchise. Terminator did the same thing. It was always a very masculine brand, right? But it still had great female leads, with Sarah Connor being number one. And even Claire Danes in Terminator 3, she was still a great lead, a great strong female character. But with Dark Fate, their PR around it was insulting the male fan base. Same thing, Star Wars does this constantly. So they insult the male fan base. And then what they did with Terminator Dark Fate, spoiler alert, they killed John Connor, and they literally retell the story of T2, but it revolves around the women, and they do it in a shittier way. That's terrible. That's a terrible way of going about things. And you have to look at your core fan base. Why? It's like Sonic the Hedgehog with this current He-Man trailer. And like I said, the He-Man movie, Masters of the Universe movie, could be a complete bait and switch, and it could be something totally different than what the essence of He-Man is. And that was a bummer because you have your core audience on board for this, at least the majority of them. Even with the he-him joke, I think that went over a lot of people's heads because it's he-him, aka He-Man. But regardless of that, you have your core fan base on board. Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy, like I was saying, they really go against this. You have people that work there that don't like Luke Skywalker. They have Luke Skywalker, a picture of him on their desk with a big red X in front of it. You have people with Luke Skywalker fanboy tears mugs. You have Pablo Hidalgo and other people insulting fans and popular YouTubers, crying when Luke Skywalker returned at the end of The Mandalorian Season 2. You have the wrong people in charge of your brand. You have Leslie Headland saying that George Lucas doesn't know all and she doesn't like Han Solo and Lando anymore because they were womanizers. You have the wrong people in charge. If your goal is to turn a boy brand into a girl brand, well, then you lost the plot. It's like having someone that's a vegan be in charge, now becomes in charge of a very well-known steakhouse, a very popular steakhouse, and then instead of having those steaks on the menu, they get rid of those steaks, or they start to make them in limited quantities or whatever. No, they get rid of the steak pretty much and replace it with vegan food. And then you're like, hey, I've been supporting this restaurant for the past 20 years. I want what works. This is why it's popular. I want these steaks back. And then they insult you and tell them that you are offending them and that you're the problem, even though they took over what you loved and what worked, and they replaced it what they want it to be now. And even though they keep the same name of the popular steakhouse is still there, but they've replaced what you liked and what worked, and now they insult you and they say that you're the problem. That's what these franchises are doing. You have people that are the product is now heavily dominated by their politics. And look, I'm all for inclusion. I'm all for people of color, LGBTQ community being represented, women being represented. But if you do it in a way where the plot has to revolve around them instead of them being organically involved in the plot, well, that's the problem. If you look at Star Wars, the majority of protagonists under Kathleen Kennedy's watch are all females. That is not a great thing. It's not bad that they're women, but you can see what you're trying to do. That's what that's the fan base you're now catering to, and you're pushing away the people that have supported your product, that want to buy your toys, that want to buy movie tickets over and over again to give you those repeat viewings, that want to watch your TV shows. Instead of including them, you're excluding them and you're insulting them. That's a huge problem. Lord of the Rings is probably one of the most universally loved franchises. It's sold over, I think it's like 150 million books. It's been translated in over 40 languages. If that doesn't scream universally loved, I don't know what else does. There's nothing wrong with Lord of the Rings. But then you have people that, the people that did Rings of Power, they said, well, we want to make this for a modern audience and we're going to change it. Why? Why are you changing something that's not broken? You broke it, right? You broke it now. So you are the problem. But when you do this and your core fans say, hey, what are you doing? We don't like this. Why are you changing this? Then all of a sudden you attack them and you call them, they're the problem. No, this was already universally loved and it had universal themes which people attach to. But instead, you guys want to say, hey, it's broken. We need to fix it. And no, you make it about your themes. You make it about your very small niche fan base. And here's the thing. Right-wingers do it too. And I know current Hollywood is very against this new establishment, which I am too. This new administration is absolutely ass. But you have an overcompensation. And Star Wars is key to me. Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, it's a perfect example of totally going against your core fan base, insulting your core fan base, taking your politics and injecting it into your this franchise and totally demeaning the essence and spirit of what that franchise is all about. Again, I'm all about inclusion, but this isn't about inclusion. This isn't about equality. It's about supremacy. It's about taking over and replacing and substituting. You take Luke Skywalker, for instance, one of the most popular characters of all time, and you dismantle him, you deconstruct him, and then you replace him with Rey. Not only do you replace him with Rey, but you give his story arc to a very undeserving character. People are going to go apeshit about that, and they did. But instead of understanding why people are angry, you insult them. And that's a problem. And now, The Witcher, Rings of Power, Halo, who insulted their fans, even the main actor insulted the fans, because you go against what Halo was. You totally make it about something else. And Star Wars. Now all of these things, Halo has been canceled. The Witcher has lost viewership. Star Wars, the He-Man trailer, that has more views than The Mandalorian and Grogu. And The Mandalorian and Grogu came out way before that. That's a bad sign. Star Wars used to be the it franchise, and it is no longer that. And it is because of what Kathleen Kennedy has done, and she has made it politics over story. You know what I mean? Instead of asking themselves, what can I contribute to this franchise? They have not done that. They have done, hey, what can I turn this franchise into? How can I turn this franchise into my political messaging? And that kills the franchise. Because now you have this very niche audience that is all about, like I said, I'm a very progressive person, but it can't be that, cannot be what it's about. It can't be, oh, we have female characters, but we have shit stories, right? When they inject Reva, it just felt like it was a box being checked because you inject her into the Obi-Wan series and you make her important when no one gives a shit about that character, and not because she's black, it's because she's female. If you had to introduce her in something different, maybe her own thing, maybe that would have been cool. But you put her smack dab in the middle of two iconic characters that we want to know more about what happened with them and how they evolved or regressed after Revenge of the Sith, but instead you make a lot of it about her. Your fan base is going to be upset about that, and they were. But instead, you label all of your criticism and you use all of your fans as a scapegoat for your shitty writing. And of course, you call them racist, sexist, and all that stuff. That's bad. That's really bad. Being progressive, that's not bad. But making that your personality, making that the personality of your franchise, instead of just creating good stories and good characters and letting things happen organically, well then, guess what? You pushed away your core fan base, and after a while, they're not going to show up. And that's a perfect example. The core fan base showed up for the He-Man trailer, the Masters of the Universe trailer, because it spoke to them. The Mandalorian and Grogu, people did not, because you have turned off your initial fan base, the guys and gals that have supported you for over 40 plus years. and that kept that franchise alive, you insulted them. And you had your staff members, your directors, your writers, your creators insult them and continue to insult them. Dave Filoni, I love a lot of his work, but he's no different. He's gone to many, he went to a female convention and was insulting his fan base, saying that people didn't like Ahsoka because she was female, when in reality she was an annoying ass character until she grew and evolved as a character. That's bad, you know. When you're saying your characters are above criticism, or your writing is above criticism, or your shows or whatever, etc., are above criticism because they check a box, well, then you lost the plot. You're lost in the sauce. I don't see things changing, unfortunately, for a lot of things. You have people involved in your products or your projects that don't like the source material. That's mistake number one. I go back again to Bo DeMeo and X-Men 97. People love that, and you could tell he did a really good job, and it showed because he loved it. There was a passion there. When you have people that, you see it a lot when Hollywood gets a video game adaptation and they totally go away from what made it work. Even like the Mario movie, it was a terrible story, right? But it was a fun movie, and people kept turning out in droves because it spoke to the core audience and to a mass appeal. You do have to grow your audience. You can't continue to do the same thing over and over again, which is true. But I think in a way of doing that, you have to make things organic. And I use Game of Thrones as an example. It had a diverse cast. It had universal themes. Like it was a very political show, correct? But that type of politics can be seen anywhere. It can be seen in the corporate structure. You know, once you get higher up, it gets very cutthroat. It can be seen in your military. It could be seen in your government, but it could be seen in somebody else's government for from a different country. And then all your characters progressed organically, I'd say, except maybe season 8. But people loved Dany. People loved Drogo. People loved Jon Snow. People loved the Starks, the Targaryens, the Lannisters. People loved all that stuff, and they didn't complain about, oh, this person's a person of color, or this character is a female. No, they just loved them because it was organically done. They're well-written characters, and anyone could relate to them. Same thing, like when you look at Luke Skywalker, anyone can relate to Luke Skywalker. He was a farm boy. He was a dreamer. He came from nothing and went to something and became something and lived and for adventure. Rocky Balboa, people can relate to that character. He was an underdog. He was poor, but he was a hard worker. He was blue collar. So a lot of us can relate to that. People can relate to Ripley. That role was originally written for a man, but you couldn't tell because she did such a great job, and it's a universal character. Anyone can play that character, and anyone can relate to these characters. That's the difference, and we're not seeing that anymore. You have Rey, who, and nothing against Daisy Ridley, but her character is poorly written, and then you just give her Luke Skywalker stuff. Of course the core fans are going to be upset. And instead of realizing why they're upset, you insult them, and then you attack them, and then you have the media attack them. There's plenty of things where the media is like, oh, these shows are suffering because of the toxic fan base. It's not a toxic fan base. They're your core fans. And I'm not saying, again, that there aren't toxic fans out there, because there obviously are. But the people you have in charge are definitely the wrong people in charge. Their political statements, their ideologies, their messaging is more important than the mythology and the characters and good stories. And that is where you fail. And that is why you fail. I'm really hoping He-Man Masters of the Universe stays the course of what it looks like. If you look at Sonic the Hedgehog, when core fans complained about how Sonic looked, they listened and they changed it. And those movies, they're not the best movies in the world, but they're fun, and they're supported by the fans. That's a big difference. Star Wars used to be the it brand. It is no longer the it brand, obviously, when people aren't caring about the Mandalorian and Grogu. Not saying that movie might not do well, because it could if it captures the attention of families, but you've pushed away your core fan base. You've insulted your core fan base. The Witcher's done the same thing. Rings of Power, same thing. Terminator did the same thing. Halo did the same thing. There's a pattern there. And where there are people that react in a very shitty way, they're angry because they love something, and you took something they loved and you drastically changed it, and then you insulted them for not liking it. It's like having toys your entire life, and then all of a sudden your sister takes your toys and she says, hey, you're wrong. The way you were playing with these toys, you're wrong. These are my toys now. And they were geared towards you. And then your mother also supports that and says, yeah, you are wrong. You don't get to play with these toys anymore unless you're going to play with them the way she wants to play with them. Guess what? After you're going to be very upset about that, and you're not going to understand that, and that's wrong. And that's what these current franchises have done. So it sucks to see that. I always tell people, speak with your wallets, and I think people are, because we've seen diminishing views, diminishing funds, being merch sales and things like that, because you piss your core fan base and a good chunk of your general audience off that they no longer want to support you, and they're not. And therefore, instead of course correcting, unfortunately, you have people doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down, and being stubborn, not being self-aware, and full of hubris, and continuing the course. And then until, sooner or later, that shit is not going to work, and you're just going to have a husk of a franchise, which is unfortunate because you have a fan base that wants to love and support you, but you don't want anything to do with them. So, weird. I'm Rohit Raju. If you agree, awesome. If you disagree, hopefully we can have a very sane banter back and forth, whether it's online or in person. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how I feel about it. I do want to give a shout out to my boy Tone over there at Banter and Babble and Let's Set the Tone. Please go support him. Please go watch him. He's doing a lot of good things, talking to a lot of good people, a lot of toy collectors, and people that do like customized toys, which is a very cool community. So if you can, please go give him a chance and check out his videos. They're doing great things over there. But I am Rohit Raju. Thanks for listening. Take care. Sound off in the comments. Yeah, brother. Sound off.